Hello, my beautiful and wonderful movie peeps. Thank you for rocking by on another episode of SideFlick. Let me provide you with some movie news. Some of the things we'll be discussing here today, guys, is it looks like Warner Brothers is up for sale and the potential buyers do mean big changes for what could happen to some upcoming movies. We finally got a set photo of Sadie Sink on the set of Spider-Man Brand New Day, sparking theories on who she's playing. And James Gunn doing a little interview where he confirms Darkseid is not the big villain for the DCU. So who is it then? Oh, we're gonna be diving into that along with so much more, so you guys know the drill. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Yes. Okay, you're wondering, Chris, why you look so good today? Stop it. I can give you the real reason, I can give you the BS reason why this ended up being the costume for this episode. BS reason? A lot of random Stranger Things talking here, so it felt appropriate, you know. Sadie Sink is one of the topics. Netflix is a buyer for Warner Brothers. I'm like, okay, we got some Stranger Things connections in here. Real reason, though, is I was told I was going to get sent the Stranger Things popcorn bucket. That was weeks ago. I was preparing for it to do a whole funny little bit where I grab it and use it and get sent to the upside down. But they never sent it to me. So now I'm just stuck with a Eddie Munson costume. I should at least recreate his iconic scene. Whatever the case, at least we got a fun costume for the episode, so let's get into the news. Yesterday, we got revealed to a new Melissa Barrera horror movie that I thought sounded pretty interesting. Deadline here has it reported that Melissa Barrera to co-star with John Travolta in thriller Black Tides. Now, there's some positives and negatives to this, but it is nice to see Melissa Barrera still continue her career and not get it completely derailed, because at one point it felt like she was going to get blacklisted from Hollywood because of the things that happened with Scream 7. And well, the premise for this movie that I thought sounded kind of cool is that Black Tide follows Bill Pierce, Travolta's character, and his estranged father trying to reconnect with his daughter, Rebecca, played by Melissa Barrera, and grandson, Sebastian, when their sailboat is attacked by rogue orcas off the southern Spanish coast, setting off a fight for survival across open waters. So basically, it's a shark movie, but it ain't sharks. It's orcas, killer whales. There's actually already even been some set photos from when they were filming the movie, and you can see Melissa Barrera and John Travolta a little bloodied up. Now, I mentioned there's some positives and negatives to this. It is being directed by Rennie Harlin, which made one of my favorite shark movies of all time, Deep Blue Sea. Of course, putting a movie like Jaws aside, if that didn't exist, Deep Blue Sea would be my Jaws. It'd be the shark movie I'd endlessly talk about, and to me personally, that one is a classic. But also recently, Rennie Harlin is responsible for the Stranger trilogy that has just been atrocious so far, man. I mean, like, they even just released the trailer for the third movie online just a few days ago, and no one is talking about it. No one could care. And they're showing Madeline Pesh ends up becoming one of the Strangers. You'd think that'd be exciting, but not a lot of people are excited. But maybe because it's more in line with Deep Blue Sea, he'll actually have something fun and interesting. And I do think going with orcas, killer whales, as opposed to sharks is different. Those things are actually very scary, and they're said to be way more intelligent than sharks. So I'm actually kind of curious how that turns out. But you guys excited for Black Tides? And well, just touching on something I still can't believe happened. We have an article by Deadline here that is detailing the loss Disney is about to take with the Tron franchise, saying here how Tron Ares ran off the grid, Disney sci-fi movie set to lose $132 million. Oh, that is awful, man, because although I wasn't like the biggest fan of Tron Ares, I thought there was still some fun to be had in that world, and visually speaking, it still was so cool to look at. And I guess it's even hurt me more for like the really diehard Tron fans that have just been like pumping this movie up, talking about how much fun and how much they loved it. It honestly feels like a Transformers 1 situation all over again, where it's just the fans that are going to be hurting really bad over this. Because with a loss like that, baby, it's it's another 10 years before we see a Tron movie again. And I think the next one probably won't be connected to any of these. It will be a straight up reboot. And for Tron, to me, it just seems more like Tron isn't as big of a franchise as Disney hopes or thinks it is. Of course, there's still a giant number of fans, but I don't think we can justify a $200 million Tron movie in the future anymore. I think when we see this franchise come back, whenever that is, it is going to be way lower budget, and maybe a more contained personal story with maybe not as many big set pieces. Almost something like what Prey did for the franchise. I think that's where Tron is headed, is back to basic small scale. I know people want to bring up movies like The Creator and be like, well, yeah, didn't they make that for 30 million? Look at the VFX. Sometimes it's really not all that simple. And that's just more a labor of love and passion of someone willing to be severely underpaid for a big amount of VFX work. There's still obviously so many other factors people are contributing to the loss of Tron. Some people blame Jared Leto, which honestly, not the biggest Jared Leto fan. I still think replace Jared Leto with like Ryan Gosling or Chris Pratt or someone more favorable. I think the movie still would have made about the same amount. I really do think it comes down to us overvaluing how big of a property Tron is. But I hope it's not dead forever. I'd still love to see another movie someday, somehow. But you guys, how did you feel about the loss of Tron? Next up here, I guess we're talking about analytics, sales, money, and whatnot. Warner Brothers is looking to officially be up for sale after weeks of, touching toes back and forth on whether they were or not. Today, they came out and made a big announcement saying that they are willing to look at multiple offers for the sale of Warner Brothers. And now the article goes into potential buyers, and I do think there are different outcomes based on these buyers. But the funny thing to me, man, is for as long as I've been making YouTube videos and talking about news, Warner Brothers has been passed around town, man, from AT&T to Discovery, and now again to another person. Warner Brothers, to me, was looked at as one of the most prestigious movie studios. It's so iconic. And the fact that it's getting sold every 2 or 3 years, I'm like, dang, why is Warner Brothers in such a desperate bad state constantly? But it's also funny what certain fan groups start to theorize and think about with this, because there's the obvious DC fans that every time Warner Brothers is up for sale, whether it was AT&T, whether it was Discovery, or now with this sale, they think, this is it. This is how the Snyderverse returns. And all last 2 times, and I guarantee you this time, ain't gonna happen. Not because I'm against the Snyderverse. I do think there were really cool things done in there, but there's only so much delusion we can have, guys. It's also the thing where I want to point out, DC as a property and attachment to Warner Brothers is the least of the concern with Warner Brothers being sold off to Paramount, Universal, or Netflix. Yeah, that's like a nice cherry on top to have with Warner Brothers, but that is not the main thing they want from this sale. It's the library of movies and the catalog of films. I mean, just envisioning how tasty it must look for Netflix, Paramount, or Universal to look at HBO Max and be like, everything that is in that app, combine it with the Peacock, combine it with Paramount Plus, or combine it with Netflix. That right there is the juiciest part and the thing they want most, because I think the biggest streaming service app at the end of the day will be the person who runs Hollywood. That's unfortunate the way things are headed, but that's the way it looks like. So let's kind of go through this. All right, so starting off with I think the least interesting, or the person that would probably be business as usual, Paramount. There was an article just a week ago that they had made their first bid and were giving a pretty fair deal for Warner Brothers, but David Zaslav wanted more money, so they rejected it. But I don't think any more juicy offers are coming if they're now out putting out statements like, hey, we're up for sale. Come to our garage sale and start bidding. Please show up. I don't think you do that when you know you have a high commodity, right? You do that when it's like, guys, hey, I need y'all to start the bidding war because it ain't happening. So to me, Paramount, I don't think would be a bad choice. To me, I feel like that would be business as usual. They'd absorb them, combine Paramount Plus with HBO Max, have a good library of movies, and try just making more successful movies for theatrical release. Universal is definitely a much more interesting one that I think offers up some other potential possibilities, not just again with combining their streaming services, Peacock and HBO Max, but you also got to think about the theme park possibilities. That's like a big money maker that's always overlooked. And with the DC character lineup and the theme park potential they have there, Universal would love that. And they've recently been making huge strides to really compete bigger with Disney World. We had their Epic Universe come out that looks awesome and makes it a much bigger contender for a park like Disney World. You add a DC section with a Gotham City, a Metropolis, and all these characters. oh, that's gonna be big. Even just the Looney Tune characters. I know a lot of those characters are attached to like Six Flags parks, but I mean, couple conversations and meetings and whatnot, Universal could then absorb all that. But maybe that's not even a possibility, because the article does state that Warner Bros. Is considering only selling their movie, TV, streaming division. So don't know how that applies to the theme park rides or whatnot, but I assume whoever buys the rights to movies, TV, and streaming also get all the other rights to them too. But probably the scariest one that I think a lot of movie fans should be fearful of is Netflix winning the bid. Netflix right now is a monster, and if they absorb something like HBO Max into their platform, they're gonna remain the giant monster they are. But then you also have to think about, what does that mean then for the future of Warner Brothers as a company? Because they'll still be making movies, but will their movies then live entirely on Netflix and only be streaming exclusives? That would shatter a lot of movie fans. There's a lot of great movies that Warner Brothers put out today that I love seeing in theaters that I would hate to just be straight to streaming. I mean, even just DC. Thinking about the rest of the DC universe being straight to streaming and the entirety of the world just living on there, well, I think that's my nightmare. No, I would not want that. I want these bigger than life movies to feel like an event and go to a place where we feel that, right? But plain devil's advocate, Netflix has lately been showing signs that they're interested in the theatrical model and that they're maybe open to exploring that side more. There was an article a couple months ago that the Duffer Brothers, Stranger Things, here we go, in costume, in theme, they were trying to have a new contract with Netflix for original programming, but they wanted theatrical possibilities. Netflix denied them. So then the Duffer Brothers went and took their business with a different studio, Paramount, because they'd be given theatrical possibilities. That probably hurt Netflix. And now we're starting to see articles where they're willing to put out K-pop Demon Hunters again in theaters, thanks to a deal with AMC for this Halloween. I know I have my tickets bought to go see Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, because it is going to be playing in theaters this October. Articles today that they're even going to play the final episode of Stranger Things in theaters. And so it seems like maybe Netflix is interested in being a theatrical monster. And I think there is value in a movie that is marketed, sent to theaters, and then eventually shows up on streaming. Movies like that have a bigger interest from people to watch them than a random movie they made, did zero marketing for, but just threw it on Netflix's homepage. Those are the movies that get forgotten within 24 hours. So I don't know, man. It is an interesting time, and we'll see what comes up of it. There's still so much more to talk about, because although I was saying, well, James Gunn and his universe is safe, you don't know. The new boss who comes in and wants to run things might want to do it differently, or they might be a fan of what James Gunn is doing, is keep him. But you guys let me know your thoughts on that. Moving on here, let's talk about some of these set photos involved with Spider-Man 4, because we finally have a look at Stranger Things star, again, in theme with this episode, Sadie Sink on the set of the movie. The first photo we got of her was covered up in this coat, which a lot of stars do on set because they want to cover up their costumes and what they're wearing, because it could always lead to hints or reveals of who they are or what they are in the movie. But that didn't stop people from spying real hard on Sadie Sink here, because they zoomed in on the bottom of the coat where she is wearing combat boots and what appears to be some sort of camo or floral pants. That alone was enough for Spider-Man fans to go crazy, and to some think, oh, I figured out who she is. Because it does eliminate some things. I mean, her hair is still red, so she's definitely not going to be playing Gwen Stacy or any characters with blonde, brown, or black hair, right? So looking now at the #1 fan theory that everyone is now predicting for Sadie Sink and who she's playing, they believe she's going to be playing a comic book character named Rachel Cole, a sidekick to the Punisher. Now, this theory holds a lot of weight because we actually have been hearing for a couple of weeks that the Punisher would have a female sidekick in this movie who would be helping him out. The source came from John Roca, who first told us about Hulk and Punisher being the characters in Spider-Man Brand New Day, so that's why it's holding a little bit of weight. Rachel Cole in the comics has a very similar origin to Frank Castle, where she, on her wedding day, was marrying the love of her life until a gang comes in, kills her whole family, including her husband, and it puts her on a path for revenge in the same way Frank Castle was put on a path to revenge after a gang killed his family in Central Park, New York. And in the comics, it looks like she is like the protege of the Punisher and is even trained and working alongside him. But as a big Punisher fan, don't like the War Machine suit, don't like the idea of him having a sidekick. Punisher is a lone wolf, is a dark guy. He's just not someone that wrangles up someone by his side and goes, come on now, you could be my Robin. But again, I will have to see how that plays out in the movie. Maybe it's not as simple as that, and it's maybe more of an annoying kid helping out. And maybe there is something to Frank Castle seeing somebody with a similar origin to his and kind of connecting with them in a way where he wants to help them get revenge and hurt bad people, because that's what Frank does. Hurts bad people. Heck, it even made me start to wonder if some of the things we've been hearing about now make more sense. Because you guys remember the theory that the Hulk is said to be revealed to have killed Peter Parker's parents during the rampage of the first Avenger movie? I said that's dumb. I don't want it. I know it happens in the Ultimate Comics, but why do we need to have that connection there? What if that story was true, but it wasn't for Peter Parker? What if the Hulk is actually the tragedy for Rachel Cole? Hulk killed her parents, and now she's been on a revenge all this time trying to figure out how to kill the Hulk, and she teams up with the Punisher, and the Punisher does see the Hulk as a threat and is like, yeah, I'll help you kill the Hulk. That Green Menace should be put to death. Would definitely put Spider-Man in an awkward position where, you know, Hulk is an ally, is a friend of his, but he did do something wrong. Someone wants revenge. How would Peter feel if he could get back on the guy who killed Uncle Ben? You know? But again, it's just not loving all these ideas, but we'll see how this movie comes out. Still very excited for Brand New Day. And even with all these set photos and theories, we still know nada about this movie, and that's exciting. Let me know what you guys think about these photos with Sadie Sink. Moving on here, talking about James Gunn. The Gunn man recently did an interview with new rock stars, along with members of Screen Crush, kind of just thanking them for their coverage of Peacemaker, being there as content creators and spreading the word of the DC. And honestly, it was really cool to see James Gunn do this. He even talked with Boba Talks, a YouTube channel on here I really respect. One of the better content creators on this platform who talks DC. And you could see James Gunn just really admired the fans who were showing love to the DCU. But in new Rockstars fashion, they, you know, asked some kind of heavy-hitting questions, and you can even tell within this interview that James Gunn was like a little back and forth on what he could say and couldn't say.
And now what seems like Darkseid's training ground with some parademons in the trees.
Well, I wouldn't go. Okay, don't.
I almost tried to catch you there.
But some things he did reveal is that, one, Darkseid looks to not be the big bad villain we're leading up to. A lot of us had this in mind because the ending of Peacemaker put us on the planet similar to that of the Salvation Run, where it was a training ground for Darkseid and his parademons. James Gunn was actually very honest and said that no, Darkseid as of right now is not something they're leaning towards for two reasons. One, because he thinks Zack Snyder did a really cool job with his portrayal, which I do agree. I would have loved to have seen that Darkseid fight the Justice League. But also it's giant similarities to Thanos and the way, you know, general audiences might just be like, oh, what a Thanos ripoff, even though they don't know who came first. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that, and it doesn't sound like Darkseid is completely off the table. He did emphasize not right now, so he could still be the big bad down the line if the universe ends up continuing. To me, then it just makes me wonder then what are we leading up to now? Some fans were even getting real crazy and theorizing because a photo of a hat from a crew member on the set of Lanterns kind of revealed the logo that showed a different Green Lantern symbol than the one Guy Gardner has, where the center of this Green Lantern symbol is a bunch of circles, leading people to theorize that maybe the center, the villain of Justice League Frontier, might be the big bad we're currently leading towards. Center was kind of like this evil entity island that housed a lot of creatures on it that could honestly easily be connected to Salvation if they wanted to, but I do think it's a lot of stretching for just a simple symbol on the ring. It could just be that maybe Green Lanterns have different symbols throughout the rings they wear, you know, we'll see. Other than that, the only other interesting thing I saw James Gunn talk about that I did find fascinating was, you know, how he feels about going about explaining or announcing his next projects. It's something that I have missed from DC, you know? You guys remember DC Fandom? Dude, those were the days. I love DC Fandom, or even the way things were announced back like in the Marvel days where Kevin Feige would get on a stage and you'd see a timeline. James Gunn just seems like it costs millions of dollars to do stuff like that, and it's so much more cost effective to just take a picture of a script on his desk, put it on the internet, and it'll get the same amount of traction. And You know what? I don't blame him.
Sometimes you really benefit going to Comic-Con and spending, millions of dollars. But other times I post a picture of the cover of a screenplay on Instagram for $0, and it's equally effective. It gets just as much press.
If that's where they're cutting corners and saving stuff so other things can have that money, I get it. But I do think there is some loss of an event feel when everything is just kind of announced through a random tweet, you know? Either way, still cool, and I'm still excited to see how all this comes together. Even with some of my issues with the Peacemaker finale, I don't think that's major panic time. I still think that was just a small bump in the road, and things should be looking up from here. But I toss it off to you guys. How do you feel about James Gunn confirming Darkseid right now is not the current big bad, and his perspective on how he goes announcing projects? Anyways, guys, that is all the movie news we currently have going on right now. I'm gonna thank you so much for taking time my day to watch me talk some movie news. Don't be forgetting to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Eddie Munson. Stranger Thing on.